All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Post Status Draft. We've got another interview in our series on agency journeys. And I'm talking to a longtime friend of mine, Rob Cairns, who has been very active in Post Status, been to a bunch of our meetups, and I'm really excited to share his story today. So, Rob, thanks for being on the Post Status Draft podcast.
My pleasure, Corey. Glad to be here.
Well, Rob, let's dive in. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your agency today, name and what you do, what kind of work primarily you do for your clients.
Yep. Okay, so my name's Rob Cairns. I'm in the Greater Toronto area of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Um, I should tell you, before I got into running an agency, I have a very tech-heavy background, which a lot of agency owners don't have. So I come out of an enterprise healthcare environment, doing servers, doing all kinds of cool IT stuff to support one of Toronto's biggest hospitals. Before that, I was actually an old time COBOL programmer. There's probably a word that you haven't heard in a long, long time. And I spent some time in the financial industry. So I've got a bit of a business background. And then I jumped into agency life because, I always tell the story. I never planned to be in marketing because I had a marketing professor in school back in the 80s who came into class, and her whole thing was, oh, I'm here because I want my summers off. And I said, I swore then and there I'd never be a marketer if you paid me money to. Well, I lied. So,
Yep.
and I run an agency that's WordPress focused. A lot of it is WordPress security stuff right now, and some builds, and then a lot of email marketing and consulting these days. That's kind of where I'm at. So,
Yeah. And what's your agency name?
Stunning Digital Marketing.
And what's the website for your?
StunningDigitalMarketing.com is the agency site, and digitalmarketing.info is like my Linktree site. It's got links to everything I do on the web and where you can find me.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I know as I've gotten to know you through some of the meetups too, I hear more and more about the work you do. And it always impresses me. You're like, hey, is anybody worried about this particular update? And I know you manage quite a few sites. And I always like lean in when you talk about that because it's at the heart of what a lot of agency work, particularly at PostStatus, um, that our agencies do is that beast of maintaining WordPress across multiple WordPress client sites. Um, well, great. Thank you for that. So tell me a little bit about how you got there. I heard a little preface of that, but I wanted to start out with, where you are today. And then talk about how you got there. That's always the compelling part of these journey series to me is what happened before. So this is today. And then what's a little snippet of what led up to where you are today?
So where I am today was kind of how I got there. Was I was working in healthcare. I wasn't happy. I'll tell you that now. I was working probably 60 to 70 hours a week at the time. So this is going back 14 years ago was when we started. And I was extremely unhappy. And somebody said to me, so why don't you just go? And I said, well, I've been here 21 years. So if they want to get rid of me, it's going to cost them lots of money to get rid of me. So let's force the hand and see where it goes. Well, 14 years ago, my dad was sick with pancreatic cancer at the time. He actually passed away July 8th. So the anniversary of that's coming up. And they decided, knowing I was going to be taking some time off, they decided, we're going to make some changes and you can go away. And at that point, I was already building WordPress websites on the side. So I just kind of transitioned to what I was doing on the side full time. Now, here's where it got interesting. I decided really quickly, only building the website is only part of getting it out there. You still got to market that site and you got to do it properly. So I made a decision then and there. I was going to build a full stack marketing agency. I've taken some courses, a lot of courses. One of my mentors in this space is a gentleman by the name of Paul Toby, who I'm fond of. Paul Toby is actually the father of Adrian Toby, the founder of Groundhog, who so that's
Love Adrian.
yeah, I love Adrian. I love his dad. Saw his dad in January actually, and we sat in his house and listened to him play some jazz tunes for us while we were visiting. And and then I transitioned in, and at one time I was offering all kinds of services, and I just realized some of these I just don't want to do. So I just kind of niched down and got out of what I didn't want to do. So
I gotcha. So how long ago did you go full time with the business?
14 years ago.
14 years ago. Okay, that's awesome. We're going strong about the same time.
Yeah, about the same time. And you and I connected, I think, the first time about 14 years ago when I was in the Headway community and you were running the iThemes community. And you'd be proud to know 2 of the products in my security stack, Backup Buddy and iThemes Security, are still there to this day. So
Oh, that's fantastic to hear.
yeah.
Well, okay, so I'm really curious. Was there a point when you were like doing this on the side? What was that juncture when you're like, okay, I'm going to do this full time? A lot of the stories I hear, and it's my own, is some event, something help kind of catalyze the process to become a full-time entrepreneur. And so I'm curious. So not happy, of course. And then, hey, I think you might have mentioned this just a second ago, but I want to make sure I'm clear on it. So was there an event that kind of like, okay, I'm doing this full time. This is the only thing I'm doing.
So as I say, my dad was battling pancreatic cancer at the time.
Oh, right.
And,
Yep.
I went on 3 weeks vacation after I was on the corporate IT project #1 and amassing overtime like nothing. And I walked back in on a Monday morning. I get a call from the director secretary at 10 a.m. and say, director wants to see you in a boardroom at 3:00. And the boardroom was not the normal IT boardroom for meetings. So I just kind of put my feet up and said, okay, I know how this day's going to play out. Welcome back from vacation for me. And believe it or not, I actually shipped everything personal home from work at lunchtime in a cab because I saw the writing on the wall. I'd seen it on the wall for a while.
Yep.
Then I get called in. And the director says, you know why you're here? I said, so you're going to let me go. So let's just get it over with. And the HR manager turned to me and said, how do you feel about all this? And my response at the time was, my lawyer will tell you at 9:00 tomorrow morning. Now, no other comment.
Now, at this time, you were already doing things on the side, though, right?
Yeah.
I think that's important to note in the story because, some of these events that happen, but you were already kind of testing the waters, building some kind of side hustle, side gig on the side. So you didn't just, jump out into the ether. You had something kind of built up. Were you doing work for like friends? How did the side gig kind of start parallel to that?
Side gig, actually, it's really interesting. You asked that question. Being in tech, I'm like a resource in my family, and you can appreciate that. So I'm a tech guy, the go-to, let's send an email to, let's ask the question. And I actually got fed up with family, believe it or not. And I wrote a website. At that time was HTML and said, by the way, here's all the family pictures from the event last week, because I was also the manager of all that digital stuff. And by the way, here's links to all the questions you guys asked me, and nobody's allowed to ask me a question until you go to these links and actually do your own homework. So that was my start into domains and all of that and web stuff. And the other thing that started it was, this is going back to the days of dial-in internet providers. If we remember those days.
Yep.
In Toronto, they were a dime a dozen. So I used to switch providers, i.e. email services, more than most people, because I get fed up with one dial-in provider and I cancel, I go to another one, I cancel, I go to another one, I cancel. So I finally said, forget this. I'm going to register a domain, which I still have to this day. And then that was kind of my foray in. And then after doing static sites, I realized WordPress was the way to go. And that's what kind of opened the door.
So what was your introduction to WordPress? What kind of time period did you start using WordPress?
Would have been about 16 years ago.
Yep. Right in its first early heyday, for sure. That's about the same time I got started with WordPress, this cool platform that you didn't have to manage with all these, HTML type software and update 100 pages. You could do it with one click. Essentially, this concept of content management system was really, really crazy and awesome.
We all remember the famous 5-minute WordPress install where our our hosting providers didn't have a one-click installer like Softlicious or anything. We had to do it ourselves, right? And
Yeah, we did. I mean, I'm trying to remember when I did that. If it was FTP, putting it on the server. Yeah, I'm trying to think back about that. I used Softaculous quite a bit in the early days, but that was magical back then. If you think about it, it's like I want the ability to build a website, and I don't have to learn too many technical logistics. I remember Googling, what does FTP mean? That was one of our first posts at iThemes, because I was like, if I have this question, I bet you a bunch of other people have this question. But yeah, WordPress made it easy.
yeah, I have to tell you a funny story. You'd appreciate being over at iThemes. So I had a client years ago, was Australian, one of my first big clients. And he didn't see the spending the money on something like Backup Buddy. So the silly client came back to me and said, so write me the documentation process of to back up and restore a website menu and document it out. And the story goes that the cost of him paying for that documentation at the time would have cost him more than a yearly license for Backup Buddy. Believe it or not. So needless to say, he became a Backup Buddy convert pretty quickly, Corey. So.
Well, okay, so you go full time with the agency, starting to do on work. I know somewhere in there was like, hey, there's more to just the actual website build. There's marketing, different parts around the website. As you look back, 15 years now, what were some of the catalytic events that help you in your agency? Personal, professional, WordPress, all these things. If you look back, what are like 3 or 4 of the things that really made the difference in your agency to where you're now? I know you've been doing this a long time. I know you've been able to have freedom of life to do different things in your life as part of the business, part of WordPress, which is always the magic, I think, WordPress. But if you look back, what are those couple of things that kind of stand out?
A couple of things. One is I come from a family of entrepreneurs. So my mother is 78 years old, still alive and still selling houses, believe it or not, as a real estate agent. My aunt, who passed away at 92, was one of the top real estate brokers for Century 21 in the Farmington, Detroit area for many, many years, very successful. I come from a family who's done business on their own, so that helps. My father was a CFO for an insurance broker, so that helps. That helped install some money sense into me and some business sense into me. I'm also a lifelong learner. So you and I have talked over the years about how much reading I do or how much listening to other podcasts I do. Believe it or not, my own podcast is not on my podcast player. Bad Rob. I'm busy listening to everybody else's because I think you got to get a variety of point. And then kind of just people along the way, people like yourself, people like Paul Toby. Paul was a big catalyst for giving me credit and saying, more than like 75% of the world, just go after it. So Paul was really good for me around mindset more than just technical stuff. So that was good. And then things like in my life, recognizing, and you and I have had this conversation about mental health challenges and the whole pearls around that. You've been through it. I've been through it. We've talked about it very candidly together over the years. That has helped. I am probably 200% more mental healthy today in my 50s than I was in my 30s. I would say that. So
ditto. I think I want to say ditto. I think
so. And then surrounding yourself with the right people, and people like yourself, people like Post Status Group, people like people outside of the Post Status Group, people you can go to and say, hey, I just need an ear, or hey, I'm stuck on something technical, I should know. Doing that. And then kind of a big part of all this was deciding a number of years ago that I'm such a security junkie, and I always was, even when I was in healthcare. And I need to dive into the security space and put my time and money there. And that was a big part of it too. And that's how that came to birth. You mentioned I manage a pile of websites. As of yesterday's count, 418, believe it or not, just from an update and security perspective, and growing by the day. So
It's for sure become a thing and a good part of our industry and community that there's agencies like yours. And I've talked to a lot that are recognize WordPress is awesome. There's a lot of things that go into it as far as keeping those things updated. So somebody goes, "Oh, I built it. I built the baseball field of dreams. It's there. Cool. Everybody's going to come to it." There's two sides to the coin that's really interesting with your story. One is that updates, security, part of it. Got to keep the field maintained. The other side is the marketing part, what I find is fascinating because you've got this two blend of marketing and the really the maintenance side that includes this big topic called security.
Yep, it's true. And like one of the biggest things I think agency owners don't do well is they don't manage their own mailing lists, let alone their client mailing lists. And email marketing's become one of my strengths over the years. And I think that is a big deal because the only thing you really own is your website and your mailing list. Everything kind of what we call rented land or other people's land, and the rules change by the day, and it gets to be awful. So
Yeah, it's interesting. I've talked to a lot of people. I think a lot of the WordPress community saw one thing from my work at iThemes, but I go, want to know the key to what we built. There's a lot of keys, right? But one of the big keys, especially marketing, was email marketing. And I love how you said website, what you really own is a website and email address. You don't even own the rankings. You got to keep working on those things. You don't even necessarily own the traffic. You got to keep working on those things. But when you have what clicked for me with email marketing was this old school concept of direct marketing when people used to go door to door and still do, of course, to sell something to that person directly. And I think that's when it clicked for me is email is direct marketing, where I don't control the algorithms and whatever tech billionaire is going to buy another of the social media platforms. But if I consistently build, I was actually talking to an entrepreneur last week about this. She's just getting started with the physical product. And I said, hey, all the jazz and the sexiness is out on the social media platforms. However, it's a great way to get started. Push them, funnel them into an email where you can still to date in 2023 directly market. It still works.
it does.
But so many are averse to it or don't do the work to grow, maintain their email lists and use them properly.
And to segment them properly. I mean, the big issue is, so I'll give you an example. I have an email list that's running about 7,500 active right now. I've probably got, if you count people I haven't opened stuff in like the last 60 days, I'm probably closer to 1,200. So the key is not to send emails to your whole list, send them to the 7,500 that are active. And then every 6 months, touch base with the other people once in a while. Like, because honestly, that's wasted time and money. Like, don't put your emphasis there. Segment your list and figure out what people want from you and who's going to open stuff. And as a result, on that 7,500, I run an open rate of about 62% on a regular basis, which is incredible.
Yeah, indeed. And it all takes work. Websites take work, email lists take work to properly do it well. So, a couple of the things I'm interested in the last 15 years or so you've been doing this is what you've seen kind of transition the evolution of WordPress, from and websites within that. So, how WordPress has gone in the last 15 years. Where do you think it is now? Where do you think it's going in the future? What your clients are seeing and valuing as part of having a great web presence. And I'm curious your thoughts on those two things. So the underlying technology, how it's grown in 15 years. We just celebrated 20th anniversary of WordPress, which is just fascinating to me.
Sure is.
And then, this changing perception, I think, growing, valuing perception of websites, the value of having a WordPress type website.
So there's a couple of things. When we all started WordPress, you and I, it was basically a blogging platform. And now we're building these whole robust membership sites, e-commerce sites. We're building all this stuff. And it's incredible. And people say, oh, why don't you go to an e-commerce platform? Well, I have to tell you, I picked up the paper this morning before we jumped on this call, Corey, and Shopify, who we all know is one of the big e-commerce products, is in trouble with the Canadian government because they refuse to hand over shopping records to the tax people so they can go after individuals. And the cool thing about WordPress is that's all self-contained. So as we get into this privacy era, everything's within your dashboard. And you can even buy marketing solutions like Groundhog, Adrian Toby, or Fluent CRM, another one that reside right inside that dashboard, which protects your privacy and puts you in control. And I think that's the whole thing about WordPress. The other big thing I've seen is a big change in the hosting space. And you'll agree with me. What's old is good, and what hosting companies have reinvented themselves in the last while. And two I like to point out to is one over at Newfold, and we both of us have a mutual friend there in the name of Dave Ryan at Newfold. So Dave and his team, I've had many dealings with them. They were the old Endurance, and they came out of that, and they're trying to reinvent themselves by running around and buying plugins, like they bought Yoast and they bought Yith and doing things like that. And then important for Newfold, they've become more community aware than they've ever become before. So, and then even in the hosting space, you got companies like Liquid Web and WP Engine and Cloudways. And then you've got companies that were leaders that have kind of dropped off. And a company I throw into a group like that is SiteGround. I think, 5 years ago, they were great. And then something's kind of happened. So things go cyclical. In terms of the technology more, it's worth mentioning where we've gone. So we've gone from coding in WordPress with plugins to page builders. And your team at iThemes was one of the first with your builder product, right? At iThemes to build sites. And then we got into things like Headway, which we all know the story on what happened there. And they were, part of their problem was they were miles ahead of their time and just not adapted. And then we got into the traditional page builders, like the Beaver builders, the Elementors, the Bricks, that kind of stuff, which is prominent now. And now we're headed to this magical thing called blocks. And, there's a couple block ecosystems. The one I use is Cadence. I've been all in with Cadence for a couple of years now. So there's evolution in that spot. And I think where we're starting to see more is WordPress is becoming more than just a publishing platform. Automatic owns Tumblr. Automatic owns Pocket Casts, one of the biggest podcast players out there. They own the Day One Journal, which is a journaling app. I would encourage anybody out there who needs a journaling product to go get it. It's worth every penny of it, like honestly. So they're trying to democratize that whole solution. So there's a lot that's gone on in 20 years.
Yeah, there's a whole history there and everything you talked about. I think what stands out was the hosting industry. It's definitely evolved, grown, and a lot of money has come into WordPress hosting space in particular. You talk about Newfold and Endurance, for instance, like it's turned over, been sold and bought. So many acquisitions in the space, and for good reason, because WordPress is a great platform for millions of people to build their website on. But there's a trend there too, which is you talked about the reinvention and kind of coming out of stuff. What I've seen in 15 years plus years or so is, it starts out good. You're trying to clamor to get new customers, new clients, show them, help them with their stuff. And it seems a lot of cyclicalness of like, okay, they reach this point where now they're trying to really, all the hosting companies, I would say, should make a profit. But then there's a SWAT that like, okay, increasingly trying to make it more profitable, which I understand, part of business. However, then you see customer service and support start to kind of fade with some of that. And then you get this whole, okay, they're going down and they're going up. And I'm not going to name the names, but there's a lot there where you see the cyclical up and down of that hosting side, which isn't always healthy for WordPress either. I get it as a business part, what they need to do for their shareholders, partners, all that kind of stuff. But it's definitely changed from like 2008 when I think this was on a shared hosting plan for like, I don't know, $5 a month or $10 a month at like HostGator. And I've kind of bemoaned it some because what the effect now is the experience for the WordPress user, those people that are your clients that are using their website, and there's that up and down. They've had to ride some of that, and it's always not a good thing for the health of the ecosystem.
It's true. And the other thing I should add to this discussion is I think the team up at Automatic, the parent company of WordPress, has been much more receptive to comments, suggestions than ever before. And I know some people don't feel that way, but I think we're in really good hands with Josepa being the executive director of the WordPress project, and things like that. And I know on the Gutenberg side, I've gotten to know Matthias Ventura, the Gutenberg lead, a little bit, and people like our friends Birgit Polyhack, or people like Jessica Frick over at Pressable, which is an Automatic company. People like that have put us in pretty good hands, frankly.
Yeah, my personal opinion is Automatic has long-term commitment to the industry, and I'm really proud to have them as sponsors, a lot of automaticians and post status, and for good reason. But a long-term commitment to, like, they have had the opportunity for many years to really, really monetize what WordPress is, and have held back. I think this is only my personal opinion. No facts really share others' leadership there, but they go have had a long-term commitment because they believe in open source, they believe in the open web, and the ecosystem is healthy when you have a diverse set of people offering services and products to that. So you get great performance. Obviously, they know WordPress inside and out, and then the support. And those are the things that kind of wane over time in any hosting company that I've been around. I've been a customer at many of the ones you talked about, had clients and friends at many of the ones that you talked about. And but the consistency, I think, is what matters overall. So I agree with you. Okay, so we talked about a whole lot of stuff now. I want to ask this specific question related to your clients. What are you hearing from your clients about WordPress, how they're using their websites? Because I love talking to our agency owners, because tip of the spear for me is the people out there doing the work. For those people using WordPress, they might not even know or care that there's this open source platform underneath it all. But what are you hearing from your clients about WordPress and working with the websites?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I don't think my clients care what's under the hood. So by that, I mean, they don't care if it's a WordPress site, if it's a custom HTML site, if it's something else, as long as it gives them the results they want. So one of the things I've been pushing in the community for the last 10 years is don't sell the solution, sell what it brings you. I'm a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Outcome of something, not how you get there. And if anybody doesn't believe that, I suggest you go look up a guy by the name of Simon Sinek. Start with Why is his book, and find his TED Talk and watch it again. So sell the what you get out of it. So that's the first. I also think clients, I hate to say it, are dropping the security ball big time right now. I'm working on a site right now where the client couldn't find their backup that they were sending to a cloud drive for 6 days. And they took them 6 days to find out where they put that backup. So one of the things I find with my clients is you have to help them manage their digital assets or their digital stuff. And even more so in small businesses. What happens if the business owner gets run over by a truck tomorrow? What happens if he dies tomorrow? Do you have a succession plan for your business? Do you know how to handle that? Most people don't. So that's a problem. And then the other thing is, I think a lot of people flock to WordPress because, frankly, what are we powering now? 45% of the internet, 50%, somewhere in there. And I think that alone is a selling thing. The detraction thing is WordPress is open source. It can't be secure. They plug security holes every month. Well, guess what? Microsoft Windows plugs security holes on the first Tuesday of every month, called Patch Tuesday, and the whole business world runs on Windows more than Mac, right? And they're still plugging holes. Security is a trust factor, not a it happened or it didn't happen. So I think
I like that, because security is a non-essential a part of the digital, our digital world, particularly our internet. It's a part of it. The real question is, how are the people or companies behind that making sure it's always secure? I remember talking to a security expert. I don't know, it's been 8 years now. And they said, it's not a matter, this is one that just, all they do is security. And they go, it's not a matter of if we'll get hacked, it's when and what we're doing continually. And I go, that's part of the digital age. That's where we're at. So I love that emphasis from your part. It's just not when, it's if, and what are you doing in the meantime to help proactively do that?
And I'll take that one more, Corey. I have a saying in my business, it's not if you'll be hacked, it's when you'll be hacked and how do you recover? Where I take it. So I kind of look at this mess I've been dealing with. And a big part of the problem was the client didn't have a site updated. The client didn't have the PHP version updated. The client couldn't find the backup. You see where this is going.
Yep.
And it's, we got to take care of those assets and we got to treat them like they're important. So that's that.
Just like you would lock your car or your house at night, or your car if you're driving out to supermarket or the grocery store, whatever that is, you'd lock your car. Because you do those things. We don't even think about those things. They're so embedded now. Yep. And we need to be doing that. I love this message. We need to be doing that with our digital assets.
We're a mutual friend of ours, Kathy Zan over at Cairns, very well. And I turned to Kathy in January and said, I'm going to make you a prediction. And she said, oh, I don't like your predictions. They're usually right. And I said, I'm going to declare 2023 as the year of the vulnerability the first week of January. And that was coming out of the whole LastPass debacle that happened. And we all know about that one. And sure enough, and I think it's partially awareness, but I think there's a multitude of factors. And it's kind of played out that way. The other thing I'm hearing from clients is clients don't realize that websites have to have a budget attached to them for their business. So marketing budget. And they say, oh, we do it in-house. And I say, okay. So what's your hourly rate worth? Oh, it's worth $40 an hour. How many hours a month do you do? Oh, 5. So your marketing budget is 40 times 5. So that's the other thing. Businesses got to take this stuff seriously and start to budget for it.
I love that. So security and then budget. And that's the mindset. So, a lot of the conversation I've been having is the recognition from clients that their website is not just valuable, it's an integral part of how they do business. COVID accelerated a lot of that, I think. It's like, hey, so many physical location, bricks and mortar type businesses realizing when you can't actually see a person face to face, you still have a way to be able to do business. So I love that. It's integral. So security, part of life, budgeting. You need to budget for it just like you would any other part of your business. It's an essential part of your business. And so many of the agency owners I talk to here at Post Status, the clients are recognizing that. It's in some of the instances, I would say more like a B2B, they see it's at a very, very valuable part of their overall sales strategy. And they value it deeply. Some run their whole operations or half operations. At iThemes and Post Status too, we run our whole operation through on space. So it feels foreign, but that's not the way business is traditionally. It's, you go to a store, you travel, you walk, you ride in a horse and buggy or a car to get to. Things have changed. And that seems like what I'm hearing too is that mindset needs to change of like, this is all a part of business. Yep. Domains, websites, all the platforms you might be on, all as important as that door that opens up into your business.
100%. And then look at the criticality of it. So for example, if you're an e-commerce site that's making 30,000 US a day profit, then you need a different level of support. And somebody's got a brochure site that it's out there just to be the face of their business. So you got to think about things like that too. Very much so.
Okay, so security and budget. Anything else on your mind about when you're working with clients and how they're valuing their websites? Any perspectives you have to share there too?
I think a lot of clients in this day and age are unrealistic, and I think that's the world we live in. So it's a very much an I want it now world. It's I want it yesterday. There's no patience out there. Well, I got to tell you, I don't think clients are any different. So
Yeah. So it's the physical part of business, which I have a friend that has a restaurant supply business, and I understand how, like, when your stove or cooktop is down, they can't sell. And then now that, okay, got to have it now, and that service side is pretty intense for them. I can see that now being applied to the businesses where they see it as essential. I want to say that's a good part, but when it comes with some mindset change of, okay, we need to be able to budget for that, pay for that, and knowing, like, in the middle of the night or whenever it is, to have that kind of service turnaround is not always possible or realistic.
and communication is a big part of it too. I don't think some clients communicate well. I don't think some agencies communicate well. Like, for example, I'm going on vacation next Wednesday. Yay me. I've already sent out an email to my entire client list saying, by the way, the only thing I'll deal with while I'm away is a website down issue. Everything else sits till I get home.
Mm-hmm.
And just tell them up front. Now, they might not like to hear it, but you're allowed to take time off. You're allowed to recharge.
Mm-hmm. But good communication, getting ahead of it to manage those expectations. Yeah, absolutely vital. All right, Rob. Well, anything else you want to share that you're excited about, that you're working on or doing?
I think the big thing is the security side of it. I think we just got to be aware and make sure you're aware. And if like anybody needs help, agencies otherwise reach out. Be glad to help them, and be involved in the community. That's a big part of what you and I do. You do it with Post Status, as you know. I co-manage a large LinkedIn group with Courtney Robertson. I've got a podcast that's, it's good for business awareness, but it's also good for the community too. So get involved. The community doesn't bite. If you can go to a WordCamp, go, says the guy who's got no time to go to WordCamps right now. I have not been to a flagship. I missed WordCamp Buffalo. Oh boy, did I take stuff for not being on that one, because that's an hour and a half away. I didn't go to Montclair this weekend because, again, I got conflicts. And the other thing is, look after you and your family. And look after how you feel. Look after your health. Because if you don't do that, you can't run your business. So keep that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thanks, Rob, for being on Post Status Draft. Appreciate your work in the community and what you do with WordPress out in the world too.
Always, Corey. Thanks for having me.